Like a throbbing vein in the heart of the city, the street was, as always, a rhythm of chaos. A hot wind, thick with dust and smoke, carried the pungent scent of human sweat and the black exhaust spewed by vehicles. Lalitha, seeking the meager shade of a flamboyant tree on the roadside, adjusted her small vegetable stall and looked up at the sky. The piercing sun offered no relief. Beads of sweat trickled down her forehead, carving a path through the wrinkles on her cheeks. Her hands carried the sharp scent of green chilies and ginger, hands hardened by decades of toil, calloused from years of relentless work. Yet, with those same hands, she arranged each vegetable with a tenderness one would use to caress a child. The bright red tomatoes, the gleaming aubergines, the fresh green chilies, they were not merely her livelihood. They were a symbol of her dignity. Amidst the constant blare of horns and the clamor of people, Lalitha's mind remained calm. For years, this street had been a part of her life. A long time ago, on a rainy day, when her husband Raghavan succumbed to a fever, she was left with an infant daughter, Kirti, and a heart full of despair. From that day on, this street became her sanctuary. It was the income from this small stall that put Kirti through school and helped her grow up. And it was that same income that allowed her daughter to stand on her own feet today with a good government job in the city. Thinking of Kirti, a proud smile blossomed on Lalitha's lips. Her daughter was smart, not just in her studies, but in life itself. The image of her daughter going to work in a big office in the city flashed in her mind. How quickly time had flown. "Sister, how much for a kilo of tomatoes?" Woken from her reverie, Lalitha looked up. It was Shantama, a regular customer. "I won't charge you much," Lalitha said, her voice gentle. "Just 50 rupees is fine." After Shantama left, Lalitha was alone again. Kirti had often told her, "Mother, you should stop this struggle now. Why don't you come live with me?" But Lalitha's heart couldn't bring itself to leave the joy she found in earning her own small income. This was her world. Here, she was beholden to no one. She didn't want to become a burden on her daughter. Suddenly, the street's character changed. The distant wail of a police jeep's siren sliced through the air. A frantic rush began among the people. The street vendors hurriedly started to pack up their goods. "What is it? What's happening?" Lalitha asked a flower vendor nearby. "Some minister is coming. Move your stall quickly or the police will give you a hard time." A sense of urgency gripped Lalitha. She began gathering her vegetables and placing them into her basket, carefully, so as not to damage them. Her movements were slow, burdened by the weight of her years. By then the police jeep had pulled up beside her. Sub-Inspector Ravindran stepped out, his face a mix of arrogant authority and job-induced impatience. His eyes scanned the surroundings with a look of disgust at everything blocking the road. "What's this, woman? Are you deaf? Didn't I tell you to move?" Ravindran's voice boomed across the street. Lalitha looked at him with fear in her eyes. "Just a minute, sir, I'm packing up." Her voice trembled. But Ravindran's patience was gone. His superior was screaming at him on the wireless, and all that anger was now directed at the helpless woman in front of him. "You people will never understand." In the next moment, something no one expected happened. With the full force of his boot, S.I. Ravindran kicked Lalitha's vegetable basket. With a sickening thud, the plastic basket flew and its contents, tomatoes, aubergines and chilies, scattered across the black tarmac. Some were crushed under the wheels of passing vehicles. An entire day's hard work, a day's worth of hopes, was pulverized on the road. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze for Lalitha. The clamor of the street went silent. People stared at her. In some eyes she saw pity, in others fear. Lalitha didn't notice a young man a little way off who had his mobile phone pointed at the scene. "Don't ever let me see you on this road again," Ravindran screamed before getting back into his jeep and driving away. Lalitha couldn't cry. The words were stuck in her throat. The heavy burden of humiliation crushed her shoulders. The eyes of the crowd felt like sharpened arrows piercing her heart. Slowly, she sank to the ground. She picked up a crushed tomato from the road. The red juice oozed out, flowing along the lines of her palm, and dripped onto the earth. It wasn't just tomato juice, it was the dignity of her mother. In that moment, she was utterly alone on that street. Utterly alone, like a woman with no one to stand by her. After escaping the chaos of the street and returning to her small home, Lalitha was enveloped by a heavy silence. It was as if the moment she closed the door, she had cut off all ties to the outside world. But the memory of the wound in her heart haunted her even behind the closed door. She didn't cry. It was a kind of numbness that made even crying impossible. She walked to the kitchen and washed her hands again and again with soap. She felt as if the smell of the tar road and the crushed vegetables would never leave her hands. She tried not to look at the broken vegetable basket lying in the corner. Every glance felt like S.I. Ravindran's boot kicking her in the chest. I wish no one had seen it. I wish no one had known. This thought echoed in her mind. But the stares from the street still burned her. Her biggest fear was about Kirti. She must not know, not for any reason. She couldn't bear to be seen as so helpless by her own daughter. She wasn't hungry, but she forced herself to drink some rice water. Every swallow felt like a thorn in her throat. The humiliation had extinguished the fire in her stomach. At the same time, unknown to Lalitha, her life was rapidly flowing from one mobile phone to another. Titled, Thrissur Police Arrogance, the video went viral on WhatsApp groups. What started with hundreds of views quickly turned into tens of thousands and then millions within hours. Society was split into two in the comments. The poor mother, doesn't she have anyone to stand up for her? Officers like this should be suspended from the service. Is it right to block traffic and do business on the roadside? Whatever the reason, he shouldn't have treated a woman like that. The discussions grew heated. Local online news channels picked up the video. They blurred Lalitha's face and distorted her voice, broadcasting the news. Without knowing who the helpless woman in the video was or what her life was like, an entire society was now either speaking out for her or condemning her. As evening descended, Lalitha's phone rang. Her heart pounded, thinking it might be Kirti, but it was her neighbor Sumathi. "Sister, I saw the video. Don't worry, are you all right?" Lalitha's blood ran cold. Her fear had come true. The world knew. "What video? I don't understand," she lied, her voice trembling, and quickly hung up. It was dark outside, but Lalitha knew an even bigger shadow had fallen over her life. The secret she had tried to hide was no longer her own. Inside the chilled silence of the Thrissur Collectorate's conference hall, a discussion on an upcoming water supply project was in progress. At the head of the table sat Sub-Collector Kirti IAS. Even as she intently scanned the numbers in the project report in front of her, she was listening carefully to Engineer Varghese explanation. Her presence gave the room a sense of efficiency. "Mr. Varghese, how long do you expect it will take to lay the pipeline in the coastal areas?" Her voice was calm and clear. Her mobile phone, placed face down on the table, vibrated twice. She pretended not to notice. But when it vibrated continuously, she knew it was an unusual message. With a brief apologetic smile to the meeting attendees, she picked up her phone. It was a message from her personal assistant. "Madam, please see this urgently." Below it was a video link. With a slight frown of annoyance, Kirti clicked on the link. The video played. The familiar chaos of the street, the sounds of people talking, the blare of vehicles. Then, as the camera focused on the scene, Kirti's breath caught in her throat. It was her mother. The same sari, the same weary face. The scenes in the video unfolded like a nightmare before her eyes. The police officer's shouts, her mother's fearful stance, and then the sight of that boot kicking the basket, sending the vegetables scattering on the road. Kirti's world turned upside down. She didn't feel the chill in the conference hall. Varghese's voice faded into a distant hum. She felt her blood run cold through her veins. The hand holding the phone trembled. Her first thought was one of disbelief. This isn't my mother. This is some other woman. Her mind refused to accept reality. But when she saw the shadow of humiliation on her mother's face, when she saw the crushed tomato in her hand, her heart shattered. Disbelief was replaced by a burning rage. "Excuse me," her voice faltered, but she pushed the words out. "We'll continue in 10 minutes. Without looking at anyone, she quickly left the conference hall. Each step was taken with immense control. Only when she reached her office and closed the door, did she feel she could breathe properly. Leaning against the door, she closed her eyes. Her mother's face reappeared in her mind, her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of fury, not helplessness. They were the tears of someone whose justice had been denied. With trembling fingers, she dialed her mother's number. When Lalita picked up, she tried to make her voice sound as happy as possible. "I was just thinking of calling you, my dear." Kirti's voice was calm, a dangerously calm voice. "Where are you, mother?" "At home, my dear." "Don't lie to me, mother," the calm cracked. Her voice wavered slightly. There was a moment of silence on the other end. "I saw everything," Kirti said, and as she finished, a choked sob came from Lalita. Hearing it, in the great office that was a fortress of her authority, a steely determination appeared on Kirti's face along with the tears. The war had begun. After hanging up, Kirti remained standing. Even after her mother's sobs faded away on the other side of the phone, their echo still rang in her ears. In the silence of the office, only her heartbeat was loud. She felt the rage inside her engulf her like a flood. Her first thought shot through her mind like a bolt of lightning. A single phone call. She could call the district police chief right now. It wouldn't even take 5 minutes to find out S.I. Ravindran's name. A suspension order would be in his hands within hours. It was the easiest path, one filled with the intoxication of power, the revenge of a daughter. She paced restlessly around the room. Her hand went to pick up the water bottle on the table, to throw it in anger. But she controlled herself. She walked to the window. Below, the city of Thrissur flowed with all its hustle and bustle. The people, the vehicles, the shops. It was to purify this system from within that she had chosen this position, not to settle personal scores. Her mother's face came to her mind. The mother who had taught her right from wrong. The one who had advised her to never bring tears to another's eyes, even if she had to go hungry herself. That mother's justice should not come from the shade of her authority. It should come from the strength of this country's legal system, the same path every ordinary citizen was entitled to. On that journey, she would be a daughter's support, not an authority's revenge. The moment she made that decision, the turbulent sea inside her calmed. It was replaced by a clear purpose, like a clear blue sky. She cancelled all her remaining meetings and returned home. As the official vehicle left the collectorate and entered the city traffic, the familiar sight seemed to take on a new meaning. In the face of every street vendor, she saw her mother. In every police officer on duty, she looked for Ravindran's arrogance. A childhood memory flashed through her mind like a small flashback. A day when she was worried about not having money to pay her school fees. That evening, her mother came home happier than usual and placed a new notebook in her hands. "Business was good today, my dear." The pride on her mother's face that day was what he had crushed in a single moment. When the car stopped in front of her mother's small house, Lalita was at the door as if she had been waiting for Kirti. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and the moment she saw her daughter, the sorrow she had held back burst forth. "My dear, I've brought shame upon you," she sobbed, hugging Kirti. Kirti held her close. It wasn't the comfort of a sub-collector. It was the support of a daughter to her mother. "You didn't do anything wrong, mother. He's the one who should be ashamed," she said, wiping her mother's eyes. "We will proceed legally. You will get the same justice that any ordinary citizen is entitled to. And on that journey, I will be with you as your daughter." Lalita's sobs stopped. She looked into her daughter's face. What she saw was not the arrogance of authority, but the same just and principled child she had raised. A new flame of hope flickered in her eyes. Both of them had chosen their path. In the dim light of the police station, S.I. Ravindran was downplaying his actions to his colleagues. The viral video was the main topic of conversation. "Oh, that's just a normal thing, isn't it? If you don't talk tough to that old woman, she won't move. And on top of that, we have our superiors screaming at us. Who cares about our troubles?" he said, sipping a cup of steaming tea. There was not a trace of guilt on his face, only arrogance. "Still, Ravindran, that was a bit much. A video of a poor woman is really doing the rounds on social media," a constable said. "Oh, please. If these kids get their hands on a phone, they'll shoot anything and make it go viral. If we stop to think about all that, we can't do our jobs," Ravindran scoffed. That night when he returned home, he was met with a fierce look from his wife. She had seen the video at a neighbor's house. "How could you do that to that poor woman? Isn't she the age of your own mother?" she asked, her voice a mix of anger and sadness. Ravindran's arrogance flared up even there. You don't know anything. You won't understand the tension of this job. Just stay out of it," he snapped. But his wife's question, "Isn't she the age of your own mother?" created a tiny crack in his interior. Even though he didn't admit it outwardly, the comparison bothered him. The next day at the station, the circle inspector called him into his office. The CI's face was unusually serious. "Ravindran, do you know whose basket you kicked yesterday?" Ravindran shrugged indifferently. "Some old street vendors." The CI stared at him, then spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "That old woman's daughter is our new sub-collector, Kirti madam." The words hit Ravindran like a thunderbolt. The arrogance on his face vanished instantly, replaced by utter shock and disbelief. He felt as if the ground had been pulled out from under his feet. He had attacked not just a street vendor, but the mother of his superior. The equations of power had been turned on their head in an instant. A cold fear crawled through his veins. As he stepped out of the circle inspector's office, SI Ravindran's feet felt unsteady. His body was sweating, his throat was dry. "Sub-collector Kirti madam." The words hammered at him like a hammer. His fear was not of the gravity of his mistake, but of the consequences. The job is gone for sure. Suspension, departmental inquiry, maybe even dismissal. The anxieties about his pension, his loans, and his children's education wrapped around him like an iron chain. "What a mess you've made, Ravindran. That video has brought shame to the whole department, and now this trouble. You're going to drag all of us down with you." The CI wrung his hands. His anger wasn't at the injustice done to Lalitha, but at the bad name Ravindran had brought to the department. "I have to get out of this somehow." Ravindran's mind worked quickly. He had to settle the issue before a formal complaint was filed. He would apologize, beg if he had to. It was a desperate scramble for survival, not a sincere feeling of guilt. Using his influence within the police, he easily found Lalitha's house. That night, without the authority of his uniform, dressed in civilian clothes, Ravindran knocked on the door. When Lalitha opened it, she was terrified for a moment and stepped back. Behind her stood Kirti. Ravindran looked at them pleadingly. "Madam, please forgive me. It happened by mistake, because of the stress of the job. Please consider it my ignorance." He moved to fall at her feet, but Kirti stepped forward. Her face showed no anger or contempt, but a calm certainty. "Mr. Ravindran, you don't need to apologize here." Her calm voice echoed in the small room. "You humiliated my mother publicly, in front of hundreds of people. An apology made here under the cover of night in a closed room is not justice, it is an escape. If the humiliation was public, the apology must also be public." Ravindran was crushed by her words. He had expected tears or a negotiation. He had never expected such a firm stand. He turned back with a sense of hopelessness, as if standing before a closed door. The next morning, Lalitha and Kirti climbed the steps of the police station, the same station where Ravindran worked. Kirti was dressed in regular clothes, and she stood a little behind her mother, giving her courage. Lalitha had never filed a complaint at a police station before, and she was nervous. But her daughter's presence gave her no small amount of courage. She walked directly to the officer on duty. "I have a complaint to file." The police officer on duty looked up. He recognized the face from the video. His gaze faltered toward the circle inspector's office without Lalitha noticing. A moment of silence settled in the station. The official war was about to begin. When he heard Lalitha's request, the officer on duty looked weary. He tried to settle the matter. "Sister, isn't this something that can be talked out? SI Ravindran is ready to meet you and apologize in person. Do we really need to make a problem of it?" Hearing the words, Lalitha hesitated. She looked at Kirti for help. Kirti stepped forward. She did not reveal her position. She spoke with the confidence of an ordinary citizen who knew the law. "Under the Indian Penal Code, a crime has been committed here. As a citizen, it is my mother's right to file a complaint. And as a police officer, it is your duty to record it. Are you refusing to perform your duty?" The officer stumbled at the legal firmness in her words. He reluctantly picked up the papers to file the FIR. Lalitha's complaint against SI Ravindran was officially recorded. It was a small victory. The news that a sub-collector's mother had filed a case against a police officer spread like wildfire within the police force and the administration. Calls started coming to Kirti's phone. The first to call was a senior IPS officer. "Kirti, why are you escalating this?" This will bring a bad name to the entire force. We'll take strong departmental action against him. Can't you avoid the courts and a case? It was a threat disguised as a friendly request. The next was a local political leader. Madam, that officer is from our party. He's a family man. He made a small mistake. Can't we forgive him? Kirti's response to everyone was the same, calm and firm. Sir, this isn't my complaint. It is my mother's. She's an ordinary citizen seeking justice. My only duty is to support her in that process. She skillfully deflected all the pressure. The news also took on a new form in the media. Police officer who humiliated collector's mother on the street has case filed against him. A reporter from a leading channel contacted Kirti by phone. Madam, what is your reaction to this issue? Are you using your position to seek revenge? That evening, Kirti's answer to the question was all over the television screens. My mother is an ordinary citizen. My position is no greater than the justice the law guarantees her. I have faith in this country's legal system to bring her justice. As a daughter, I will stand by her, that's all. Hearing her words, an entire society was ready to rally behind the mother and daughter. At the same time, the walls of the establishment began to rise more strongly against them. Ravindran was isolated in the station. The colleagues who had been chummy with him yesterday now walked away when they saw him. The whispering and muffled laughter made him feel like a stranger. Once the name of the sub-collector appeared in the complaint, he became a liability to everyone. A hot potato no one wanted to touch. This professional isolation slowly began to break down the fortress of his arrogance. He lost sleep at night. Kirti's words kept echoing in his ears. If the humiliation was public, the apology must also be public. For the first time, his mind admitted there was some truth in those words. Until now, he had only been thinking of ways to escape. But now, the sense of justice in those words began to pierce him like a thorn. When he got home that evening, he saw his daughter watching a news debate on her mobile phone. The topic was the police and the public. The debate also showed Kirti's statement. Hearing her mature and calm words, his daughter looked at her father. In her eyes there was no anger or hatred, but the helplessness of trying to understand. Father, what if it was grandmother in that mother's place? The question hit Ravindran in the chest like a spear. His wife's question had been an accusation. But his 16-year-old daughter's question was a mirror. In it, he saw the ugliness of his own actions. For the first time, he saw Lalitha not as a street vendor or as a sub-collector's mother, but in the place of his own mother. That thought crushed him. Ravindran went into his room and closed the door. He stood in front of the mirror. He looked at the khaki uniform on his body with disgust. How did a man meant to protect the public become one who trampled on them? Why had he chosen this job? Where had all his ideals disappeared? The reflection in the mirror seemed to be mocking him. He took out his phone and watched the viral video one more time. This time he didn't watch it through the eyes of a perpetrator, but through the eyes of a spectator. The fear and helplessness on Lalitha's face, the vegetables scattered on the road, the arrogance in his own voice. Every scene filled him with a burning guilt. For the first time his eyes welled up. Sitting in the dark, in the light of the phone's screen, the first light of repentance dawned on Ravindran's face. Kirti's public stance put immense pressure on the police department. They realized that the issue could no longer be solved with a simple compromise. The public and the media were closely watching every move. The district police chief called a meeting of senior officers. "We cannot afford a cover-up," he said strictly. "This case must be handed over to the most honest officer in the department. The investigation must be transparent." That duty fell to DYSP Matthew Kurian. With a spotless service record and a nature that didn't succumb to political pressure, he was a respected figure within the department. Matthew handled this by the book. No corners cut. "The department's reputation is at stake," the police chief said. DYSP Matthew Kurian began his investigation not by questioning Ravindran, but by going to see the complainant Lalitha. He went to her house, not in the formal manner of a police officer, but dressed as a common man. Kirti was also with her mother at the time. Seeing a senior police officer, Lalitha was afraid at first. But Matthew Kurian's demeanor was gentle and respectful. "Mother, please tell me what happened that day without any fear. Your words are what's most important to us. I can assure you that there will be no pressure on you," he said. His approach gave Lalitha courage. With her daughter by her side, she narrated the events without missing a single detail. There was no exaggeration or melodrama, just a raw testimony of the humiliation a regular woman had to face. As Lalita spoke, she transformed from a victim into a confident witness. As he left, Matthew Kurian told Kirti, "Madam, your faith in the system will not be for nothing. We will try our best to uphold that faith." Those words were a ray of hope, the hope that within the system itself, there were people who stood for justice. A few days later, Lalita returned to her vending spot. It was a silent act of defiance, an attempt to reclaim her space. But this time, she was greeted not with stares, but with respectful smiles. A vendor from a nearby shop came and helped her set up her stall. A regular customer, after buying her vegetables, said, "Stay strong, sister, we are with you." A police patrol jeep passed by. The young officer inside saw Lalita. Instead of turning his face with a look of indifference, he nodded slightly at her. It was a small gesture, but in that single movement, there was a sign of a bigger change. The struggle started by Lalita and Kirti was no longer just their own. When Ravindran received the official notice to appear at DYSP Matthew Kurian's office to give his statement, his heart sank. This was the beginning of the official proceedings he had feared. If it were the old Ravindran, he would have looked for loopholes to escape. He would have argued that Lalita was blocking traffic and that he was just performing his duty. But the weeks of internal conflict had changed him. His daughter's question and his own reflection in the mirror had haunted him. As he entered DYSP Matthew Kurian's office, his feet felt heavy. It was a normal office room. There was no atmosphere of threat or authority. Matthew Kurian looked at him calmly. "Ravindran, the FIR is clear. The video is also clear. I want to hear your side. What really happened?" Ravindran closed his eyes for a moment. His mind whispered that this was his last chance to lie and escape. But another voice overpowered it, the longing for the kind of peace that could only come from telling the truth. He looked at the DYSP directly. "Sir, what the video shows is the truth," he said. He didn't stop. "My anger, the pressure from my job, I was taking it all out on that poor woman. The mistake is mine. It is entirely my fault." He did not make any excuses or try to justify his actions. He spoke not with the hesitation of a criminal, but with all the vulnerability of a human being admitting his mistake. Matthew Kurian, with his years of experience, knew there was sincerity in his confession. "Your statement has been recorded. The law will take its course. As part of the proceedings, you are suspended from service until the investigation is complete." As he stepped out of the DYSP's office, Ravindran was officially suspended. He had no power, no uniform. He should have been a defeated man hanging his head. But strangely, for the first time in weeks, his mind was at peace. The fear of being caught was gone. A kind of purity that came from telling the truth enveloped him. He was not fully free, but he had taken the first step on that path. As he walked out and looked at the sky, his face showed not fear but a strange clarity. He was ready to face whatever consequences came. When the news of SI Ravindran's suspension broke, the issue took on a new political dimension. The local political leader who had failed to persuade Kirti saw an opportunity. He had no specific fondness for either Lalita or Ravindran. But the thought of a suspended police officer being a voter in his constituency awakened his political cunning. He called a press conference. "A police officer is being hunted by an IAS officer. This is an abuse of power, a revenge against a subordinate." This statement ignited a new debate in society. With it, some people started trying to paint Lalita's fight for justice as a vengeful act. Kirti was watching these political manipulations. Even as her mother's case was moving forward legally, she realized that the real problem wasn't being solved. The gap between the police and the public, the mental stress officers faced, and the lack of empathy. Punishing Ravindran alone was like treating a symptom of a disease. She knew the disease itself needed to be cured. She decided to use her position constructively, not for revenge, but for reform. She prepared a blueprint for a project. Project Maitri, Friendship. The core of the plan was to provide proper training to lower-level police officers on communication, stress reduction, and empathetic behavior. It was also about building good relations with vulnerable communities like street vendors. She requested a meeting with the district police chief, not to discuss her mother's case, but to propose this new project. She was growing from a person with a personal problem into a public servant with a mission to improve the system. In the district police chief's office, Kirti explained her plan. He listened with awe and respect. At that moment, DYSP Matthew Kurian arrived to give an update on the case. The police chief handed the proposal to him. "Matthew, take a look at this. This is the issue Sub-Collector Madam came to discuss." As he scanned the proposal, Matthew Kurian looked at Kirti with respect. "This is excellent, sir. This is exactly what we need." A new alliance was forming in that room. The district police chief, the just investigating officer, and the young IAS officer who had initiated a reform. The issue before them was no longer one individual's mistake, but a correction the system needed. The story was growing from a personal fight for justice into a mission for social change. Project Maitri was officially approved by the district police chief's office. The senior officers saw Kirti's idea as a constructive way to handle a crisis. It was decided to implement it as a pilot project in Thrissur city. DYSP Matthew Kurian was given the responsibility of overseeing it. Kirti's struggle had moved from a personal level to an official one. At the same time, Ravindran, sitting at home on suspension, was aware of all this news. On one side, the political leader was shedding crocodile tears for him and making statements. On the other side, the daughter of the woman he had humiliated was creating a great project for the police force. The comparison struck him like a thunderbolt. He realized that Kirti's goal was not personal revenge against him. She was trying to correct the flaws in the system that created officers like him. His private confession had been only to the DYSP. But what Kirti had said was right. The humiliation was public. He had to pay his debt publicly as well. This wasn't to get his job back, but to get back the respect and clear conscience he had lost. "I have something I have to do, for my peace of mind," he told his wife. A look of concern crossed her face, but she didn't stop him. The next day at noon, Ravindran walked to the same street where Lalitha's stall was. He was without the authority of his uniform, a simple human being. After a break of a few days, Lalitha had returned to her spot with her small stall. Ravindran walked straight to her. When they saw him, the other vendors and customers fell silent. A kind of tension filled the air. Some people were afraid he had come to cause trouble again. But Ravindran bowed his head in front of Lalitha. His voice was soft, but it was clear enough for everyone around him to hear. "Mother," he called. Lalitha was startled and looked up. "I apologize for the mistake I made that day, in front of everyone here. As a son, I ask for your forgiveness." He didn't stop at words. He took new vegetables, tomatoes, aubergines and chilies, from the cloth bag he was carrying, and carefully placed them in her basket, a kind of atonement for what he had kicked away that day. Lalitha stood frozen for a moment. The man in front of her was not the arrogant police officer. He was a human being genuinely remorseful for his mistake. She saw the moisture in his eyes. Her heart melted. She nodded affectionately. "It's all right, my son. God will do good things for you." Ravindran accepted her words like a blessing. The tension in the faces of the people around them eased. Someone clapped softly, and then others joined in. Some mobile phones were capturing the scene, but this time, it was not an image of shame, but a true glimpse of repentance. A little way off, sitting in a car, DYSP Matthew Kurian was watching it all. He had come to observe, fearing that the politicians might cause a problem. The sight he saw touched his experienced mind. He took out his phone and called Kirti. "Madam, you've won." "Sir?" Kirti didn't understand. "It's not just your mother who has won, we all have. Ravindran has publicly apologized to Lalitha right now, a heartfelt apology." Sitting in her office on the other end of the line, Kirti's eyes filled with tears. True justice had been served, not through force or legal loopholes, but through a change in a man's heart. She realized that the path of forgiveness her mother had chosen, and the path of restraint she had chosen, had been the right ones. Even though Ravindran's public apology had moved the public conscience, the official proceedings continued on their own course. DYSP Matthew Kurian submitted his investigation report to the district police chief. The report included all the facts: Ravindran's abuse of power, Lalitha's statement, the viral video, Ravindran's confession, and finally his public apology. The file reached the Departmental Inquiry Committee. Given the seriousness of the crime, the penalty could have been dismissal from service. Some members of the committee were of that opinion, arguing that it was necessary to send a strong message to society. But Matthew Kurian put forward a different perspective. Sir Ravindran's mistake was a serious one, and he must be punished for it. But the aim of the law is not just punishment, it is also transformation. He is truly repentant now. His public confession has taught a greater lesson to society and to other officers than any ordinary punishment could. Instead of completely destroying him, shouldn't we use his change constructively? He also mentioned Kirti's Project Maitri and reminded them of the sub-collector's stance that reform, not revenge, was needed. After much discussion, the committee came to a decision. It was not a typical punishment. Ravindran was not dismissed from service. Instead, he was demoted from the rank of SI to head constable. He was transferred to a remote station and was ordered to compulsorily participate in all the training programs of the newly launched Project Maitri. It was a compromise, a balance between justice and compassion. Ravindran accepted the verdict with humility. When Kirti heard the news, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. When she told her mother, Lalita said, "He has corrected his mistake, my dear. That is enough." The inauguration of Project Maitri was held at the Thrissur Police Parade Ground. Many senior officers, including the district police chief and Kirti, attended the ceremony. When Kirti spoke on the stage, her words were not those of a stern administrator, but of an ordinary citizen who believed in the system. One of the first sessions of the training program surprised everyone. The one who came to speak to the new trainees was Head Constable Ravindran. Without the authority of his uniform, he stood before the young officers as a common man. He told his story, the stress of the job, his arrogance, the mistake he made, the mental conflict he and his family had suffered, and finally, the realization he had come to. There was a raw honesty in his words. "This uniform gives you great power," he said, "but its true strength is in how you treat the most vulnerable person you meet. In one moment of arrogance, I lost the respect I had earned over many years. This mistake should never happen to you." The wisdom in Ravindran's words was something no textbook could provide. Sitting in the back row, Kirti and Matthew Korean were listening. They knew their mission was finding its purpose. The villain of this story was becoming its greatest teacher of transformation. A year later, there were no major changes to that street in Thrissur. But there was a change in the atmosphere. Lalita was still there with her small vegetable stall, but in place of the old helplessness, there was now a look of self-confidence and dignity on her face. The vendors and people around her looked at her with respect. She had become a symbol of survival. Kirti's Project Maitri was a success, and the government decided to implement it statewide. As a young officer who had abandoned the path of revenge and chosen restraint, she earned great respect. In a remote rural station, Head Constable Ravindran continued to do his job. One day, a similar incident occurred in front of his station. A superior officer was yelling at a poor farmer. Ravindran went to them. He did not defy his superior. Instead, he calmly spoke to both of them and resolved the issue amicably. He had fully learned that his power was meant to protect. His transformation was lasting. One evening, as she was driving in her official vehicle, Kirti crossed her mother's street. She saw Lalita laughing and talking with a customer. Then a police patrol jeep passed by, and the driver waved a hand affectionately at Lalita. Lalita waved back. It was a simple sight. But behind that simplicity was an extraordinary victory they had won. A smile appeared on Kirti's lips. She realized that the path to justice was not one that arrived at a destination. It was a journey that moved forward every day with the small, brave and compassionate actions they chose to make. In that quiet realization, her heart was filled. In the sky, the setting sun was making way for a new dawn of justice.